In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to go from this to this. So if you haven't seen the first part, please go and watch it, because that one pretty much was how we drafted our pattern and how we came up with this design and our choice of stiffeners and every other thing in between. So let's jump into the part 2. So these are the pieces I already cut down. I'm using chipboard for the sides and under the flap. That one is optional, you don't have to do this. I just did this because my lining is kind of lightweight and it's pretty much just the flap and the top of your bag. So this is our main piece here. I'm actually using EVA foam, or people call it Mako. It isn't really thick, it isn't really sturdy. I just wanted something that would be really flexible, since this is a school bag instead of a handbag. So this is the thickness that we're using, is 2mm. And for our quilting, I'm actually using, I don't know, I just call this soft foam, 1 centimeter thick. So this is an upcycle project, meaning we are repurposing denim from old garments, and we're actually using just these 2 shades because I really love how they look together. And the lining we're using is kind of lightweight, but it's actually pretty sturdy, because this is what they use for normal like school bags or even travel bags. I'm going to find the exact name of this fabric, but we'll just call it lining here. So BTS, I already cut down 1-inch straps and I just sewed this side. This is just to save time so this tutorial doesn't get too long, and it's actually 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch. So I just cut some down and sewed the sides down, and I just have this extra for the top handle, and I just use a little amount for buckles. And this is our bag lock. Sorry, it's a bit scratched up. I don't want to use the good stuff for something like this. This is just a tutorial, so it's just to learn. So these are the back bottom studs. These ones actually use screws. I didn't have any other nice ones, so we have to manage that one. So I'm just going to like carve out our foam before taking it for quilting. I mean, I'm really sad because I actually lost footage for the quilting itself, so I had to just like get some time lapse from my phone. But let's just carve this first before clipping it down and taking it to the sewing machine for quilting. So this is our repurposed footage from my phone. I actually lost the one that was in my camera. I was so sad. But this is what it's supposed to look like, sha. And this is the flap. We have the top and the back, because I use those lines as guides. So I'm just moving my hand like 2 centimeters from where the flap is, and that's why I'm going to rule this line. This is just a guide so that we don't go and mistakenly sew our handles too low or too high. So of course you mark the center, and yeah, it's just to attach the handles, and we move to attaching the other side of the denim itself. So I'm just going to sew this down first before sewing the denim on top, so that it's neat and it's really straight. So when we stitch it down like this, you can actually use rivets. You don't have to sew, you can use any method, because you're still going to sew over it, so it's going to cover. So because it's an upcycle project, so there was a lot of joining. That's why I wanted it to just be one long piece, so that the joining doesn't look too messy or too tacky. So this is me just sewing over, like top stitching over the attachment, so it looks intentional, so it's not so obvious that everything is just cut and join at this point. So now we can actually move on and glue down the other part of our project. So I'm going to put the glue on just one side, because it's contact adhesive. It gets really messy when you put it on fabric, so I just put it on the stiffener itself, then smooth over. And because fabrics can absorb, that is why I don't let the gum dry fully. But you have to still be careful, because if it stains the fabric, I don't think you can ever wash it off without damaging the fabric itself. So I'm just going to smoothen this with my hand to make sure any rumpling or squeezing comes off, before moving on to trimming the excess fabric out, so that it's just sort of neat. I don't want it to be too messy. You have to make sure your project finishing is always nice. It's like a priority for me. So this is just putting contact adhesive around the outer part of the material first. This is actually for wrapping. If you are really familiar with structured bags, the principles of this backpack is very similar. I just moved around dimensions and changed a few things, and chose to put my handles instead of the side. I just put it on the back so you can wear it like a school bag. So this is a different type of school bag, and if you actually want to make it sturdier, you can actually switch to kariboard or cellulose paper so that it's not this soft, it's a little bit more stiff. So I'm just using this one now. I don't pin this down fully. I just want to sort of like ascertain exactly where I want my bag lock to be. If you have to make a pattern for this type of bag, this is actually something you do at the pattern stage, but because it's a single project, I can do this at any point I want. And please don't make the mistake I used to make when I was still starting off, where I would forget to put this side first before closing the back of our piece, our main piece rather, because after this then you can now start closing the back. So we're already sort of getting like an idea of what our project is going to look like, but before we do that, I just want to attach the back bottom studs. So I was going to do this without any extra thing, but when I looked at it was too round at the bottom, so I decided to reinforce with some cellulose paper. So if you're already using cellulose paper for this project, you don't have to, but if you are actually going to reinforce like me, I had to trim out 1 centimeter from either side so that I don't sew over it. So it sort of does its job with reinforcing the base of the bag without getting into your sewing area. So people that don't have like industrial machines, or you want to sort of like maneuver with a flatbed, this is something to consider. This is a personal preference. I didn't put this in the pattern stage. It was just tracing out the dimensions for the base of the bag, then removing any extra allowance on either side. So after doing this, I would use my bag bottom studs or bag legs to hold this together. But just because I have trust issues, I actually put a little bit of contact adhesive. I don't think I showed that here, but I just smeared a bit just for extra reinforcement, just because I have trust issues, no other reason. The back bottom studs would have been able to, because they act as screws that would hold your piece together. So this is me just attaching it. So I'm just going to screw down all 4 of them first before flipping it over and tightening with the screwdriver. Thankfully, these back legs are actually really sturdy too. So if you don't want the normal ones that have like the bendy legs behind, you can actually just opt for these ones. And these ones aesthetically, they are more pleasing, they're neater. And because it's a bag, so you need this. If not, you're going to be dropping your bag on the ground itself. So they act as little legs. So now that I'm done with that, I will move to the next stage. So please forgive me, I totally eyeballed this one. I just knew I didn't want it to be too low, but I wanted it to be diagonal. So you don't have to have a perfect or a particular dimension for this. Just make sure you have at least 1 inch from the bottom, because if you think about it, when you bend that thing, it's going to affect it. So I just moved my hand up a bit. Thankfully I had my guidelines, so I knew I wasn't going to make a mistake. So after putting that one in, you stitch it down and make sure you burn your thread so that it doesn't unravel. So now we're done with that piece. Now is to move to the lining. So because my lining of choice is actually pretty light, that's why I wanted to do this thing with the kariboard, which is basically just tracing out the flap and the top of your bag. And this one gives a, I don't know, sort of like neater finish. But if you know you're going to line with some sort of synthetic leather, you don't have to do this. You could just make sure you trim your leather well, then gum it, then trim all the edges properly. I used to do that before, but when I started opting for fabric lining for structured bags, I had to start doing this trick because it actually gives a better finish. So after putting the gum on all round, but if you know you're going to be sewing and you don't have time to wait, you have to do this properly. I seem to rush this process a bit because I knew, okay, yeah, I wasn't like in much of a hurry, and I just needed this project to just be done in the best way possible. So this is the only part where I know I couldn't rush, which is adhering the bottom of your flap to the top. So I usually like to maneuver it around the edges first and make sure that it's straight, because you are gumming a paper to a foam. If you make a mistake and pull it out, one of them would give. So by some miracle, we actually survived that, and it actually did come out straight enough before taking to stitching. So just make sure that this part is neat, because when you open the bag, that's the first thing you're going to see. So after doing that, I'm just going to smear a little more contact adhesive on. I think I used a little too much for this part, but please forgive me. But then again, I'm just going to open my lining out, and from the middle I will work my way out to get rid of as much air pockets as possible. I mean, it's almost impossible, but we try our best. So the next thing is to trim this other end, because this is the last thing you have to do before you start closing your bag. So I like to just trim about 1 centimeter for allowance, then fold it in. And please, let me just say this now. People always ask me this thing. You don't add any allowance to your stiffener. You are literally just wrapping your stiffener and sewing everything together. So any measurement that you got from part 1, just do exactly that measurement and do exactly what you see, because people always ask me about allowance and everything. Your allowance that you are folding in is what you need to consider, but the stiffener itself is the exact measurement. So now we're doing the gussets. I'm just going to quickly fold this in before moving to joining the lining in. So let's just do that as quickly as humanly possible before moving to the next stage, which is attaching the lining. So quick tip, if you're doing this side, you have to really mind your gum. I don't know if you should be able to use other types of gum, maybe like Uhu or craft glue, but contact adhesive is always the go-to because it's really tacky and it holds down well. So you don't have to, but it's just like a personal recommendation to use contact adhesive. If you want to know more about contact adhesives and other types of options you have to consider when doing craft, you can actually check this link and see if you can actually find something in your purview. So before we actually go to close the bag, I'm just not going to trim this at the top. I'm just going to trim it all the way around and the bottom. So this is also a personal preference. I like my finishing to be as neat as possible. At least let me know that I tried my best and I didn't just like half the whole thing through. But after trimming all these ends, then it's remaining to close the top. So I'm just going to trim this too, then take it to the sewing machine. I was supposed to do this on the table. I don't know why I did it at the machine, but thankfully the fabric itself actually has good give. So when you fold it like this and you're sewing, the machine doesn't drag it. It doesn't scatter the fold. Let's just say it like that. So carefully, as neat as possible, I'm just going to sew this down. And since the lining itself is navy blue, the thread at the bottom was navy blue, so please consider that. I know people don't really care about color of thread, but I am really picky when it comes to that. If it's going to be a different color, like the way we have the tan on the denim, I don't mind that. But if you want it to match, please use the nearest possible shade. So now this is the second to last step for our backpack tutorial, and it is the closing. So if you haven't seen the first part, I beg you, please go and watch it, because you have to make sure that your pattern was properly drafted first before you even dream of sewing. So don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you learned something. If you are a new subscriber, if this is your first time seeing our content, thank you for stopping by and watching. And if you are one of the old subscribers that started with us from the days of Eris Atelier, thank you for supporting us. Thank you for watching our videos. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the subscribes. Thank you for all the referrals and the feedback. But if you are a YouTuber also and you're actually into bag making or any type of craft, you can actually DM me or put in the comment section. I am actually open to collaboration. As long as it's something that you want to teach or you want people to learn, I'm actually open to collaborating. If it's like a studio visit or even like a Zoom call or a virtual interview, yes, we are open to all that. But aside that, thanks for watching my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next post.